Today, we're going to talk about why everybody hates Apple. And is it justified? Is it not justified? We'll decide. And then I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. On Rknee Clips, I always forget to say that. And I'm Scott with Rknee Clips. I don't know. Whatever order you want to put it in. So, obviously, most people on YouTube tend to hate Apple. But there are several pretty solid reasons why they do. The first one being their fans. And it's not all people who like Apple, because I actually like Apple too. But it's the people who are constantly talking about like the same things with Apple. It's like there's more to just a company than like design. Because like Apple has made mistakes. And it's people that don't admit to Apple mistakes that's really frustrating. It's like when Apple designs a laptop and they like justify the really expensive pricing, but then at the same time they're like, oh, it's super powerful, but like they don't understand that if you compare that to like a Windows laptop that's equally spec'd, without that software optimization, it's not as powerful. But I guess that's one of the benefits of Apple is the software optimization. So it's like a feature, but it's also a little bit frustrating because like the Apple sheep basically. And like I like Apple. I think I'm a little bit biased towards Apple. I mean, I have Apple products, but I think their fans, like the really hardcore ones, can get a little bit obnoxious sometimes. And I think you need to be able to admit mistakes, and they look up to like Steve Jobs and Tim Cook as like gods. So I think that's the first issue, and that's one of the reasons people hate Apple. The second one is the way that they price everything out. So it's really easy. You can look on Apple's website right now. You can see their RAM upgrades just going from like 8 to 16. They'll charge like $400 for that, $200, and we all know that you can upgrade your RAM by yourself for about half, maybe even less. Right now, RAM prices are so crazy that maybe it's not quite as much as half, but you can definitely save a lot of money by upgrading the RAM yourself on your Mac. But Apple will charge just an absurd amount for RAM upgrades and then upgrading their SSDs. And it's like, yeah, they're fast SSDs, but if you go from like 1 terabyte to 2 terabytes on the iMac Pro, I think it's an $800 upgrade. $800? That's like an iPhone 8 Plus. Like $800 for a terabyte more of storage is absurd. And people who buy that are absurd because like it's nice to have storage on your device, but with not USB Type-C, but it's in that form factor, Thunderbolt 3, you get data speeds that are almost as fast as like PCIe. So people who buy that, I think, are doing it wrong. I think that's a waste of money. And one. And two, it's absurd. I mean, you're charging $800 for a terabyte of storage. Yeah, it's really fast, but this hard drive back here is 1 terabyte. And I know it's not as fast. It's not nearly as fast. I'm not saying it is. But it's the same amount of storage, and that cost me $30. So you're talking about a $30 hard drive or 1 terabyte more for $800 or $30. I mean, that's like a 40%. No, wait, that's too many. That's like it's like a 23, 26 times more expensive upgrade. That's absurd. And that's frustrating. I think a lot of people get frustrated with that. I know I get frustrated with that, but there are some benefits to that. To be fair, like Macs, how much they cost years down the line won't really change because people will still pay. I mean, this is a 2013 MacBook Pro, and I bought it for $500 last year, and I thought I was getting a pretty solid deal. It wasn't crazy good, but it was good enough where I was like, yeah, this is about what it would go for if I were to resell it maybe a year from now, and that's pretty much accurate on eBay. It's like $600, maybe $550, $500, so I'd lose a little bit after fees, but that means I could basically rent a MacBook Pro. If I were to sell it now, I could rent a MacBook Pro if I sold for like $500, and after fees, I could rent it for like $60, $70 for a full year, and that is a perk. 3, I think everybody likes to root for the perceived underdog. And you see this a lot in sports. You see this a lot in the tech industry. You see this a lot in businesses. You see this a lot everywhere. But since Apple's market cap is approaching $1 trillion, it hasn't gotten there quite yet, but it probably will be the first company to get there if everything keeps, going up. People are a little bit discouraged by that, I think, in the fact that they want to root for like Android and Windows, and they want to root for the perceived underdog. But it's funny because there are more Android devices than iOS devices, and there are way more Windows devices than Mac OS devices. So they just root for the perceived underdog just because Apple has made so much money because they do basically almost everything in-house for the most part. Their margins are a lot higher because they sell the software, they make this, they make that. So Windows is trying to do that with their Surface lineup to make a little bit of a comparison, but they don't make phones, and no one does. Google does Android the way Apple does iOS, but the Pixel phone is not nearly as popular as an iPhone is. And that's number 3. And number 4 is, I think, what Apple values over what the general population, especially on like YouTube and sites like this, is that they value design over performance for the most part. I mean, if you look at their iMac Pros, if you look at their, I guess those iMac Pros apparently are staying relatively cool, but I can't imagine they're really getting the full performance that they could if that was cooled in a desktop setting with how much heat is in that. And with their MacBook Pros, we know their dedicated graphics cards are RX 560s, and those are like basically 1080p gaming cards, like a mid-tier 1080p. But you're paying $3,000, and if you took that $3,000, you could probably buy an i7 and 1080, probably a 1080, and build your own computer. And then after that, you'd have enough left over to buy not just an i7. That's incredibly vague. You could probably buy an i7 8700K with 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. You could get a 1,000-watt power supply. You could get a Z370 motherboard, whatever, the Gigabyte Z370 Aorus gaming motherboard. You could get a 1080 Ti, and then you're at probably like $2,000, and then you could take that other $1,000 and maybe buy a laptop with a 1060 and like an i5 400 or something, 8300M, whatever, HQ, whichever one that is. So you could get, I don't think it's 8300 HQ, but it's something in there. And you could get that for the price of one MacBook fully spec'd. But you also got to think that MacBooks, when you buy a MacBook, you're not just buying hardware, you're buying software. Because I think a lot of people forget this, is that for the most part, the general thinking is, everything I run can be, like, I run Windows and that can be ran on everything. But Mac software can't be run on everything. Yeah, you can do Hackintoshes and stuff, and I know that. But for the most part, if you want a fluid Apple, like the cohesiveness between all of their devices, you have to buy strictly Apple products. And I think that's frustrating to people because they don't realize that the premium of Apple products isn't just their design. It's actually the software. So you can't get Mac OS on any other computer. You can't get iOS. You can't get the iPad's version of iOS anywhere else other than on Apple products. And I think to a lot of people, they don't get that. And that's like a little bit of a turnoff. But they don't understand that when you buy an Apple product, you are buying software with it. It's not the same as buying a $100 Windows key and then plugging it into your computer that you build and you're good to go. You have to buy only Apple stuff, so you are paying for software and hardware. So I guess that's my little bit of defense of that. But, I mean, I understand why people hate Apple. I kind of just admire Apple and what they're able to do. They can keep everything in-house. I wish Samsung would try something like this. I know Google's trying it with the Pixel, but they're like late to the game, so they got to push that heavy with stock Android. But the problem with that is Android is available on every other phone that's not an iPhone, except for like 3 Windows phones. So, I don't know. I think there's reasons to hate Apple. There are some things that they do that are definitely frustrating to people, with like the recent battery gate or whatever, and that kind of stuff. But I think what you need to understand is what Apple is as a company, and you also need to understand what Apple values, and that's optimization, design, and basically the cohesiveness between all their devices. They value that over raw performance every day, because they know with software they can sort of get the most performance out of each thing they put out. They can get the most performance out of a 2013 MacBook Pro with software optimization, because there are only, it's a very short list of MacBook Pros that support High Sierra when you compare how many laptops support Windows 10. You know the list is at least as long as the MacBook Pros, because they all support Windows 10, and then you just add on all the other laptops that have been made in the last 7 years. So Windows has a tough time of trying to optimize everything for everything, but it's not really meant to do that. It's meant to be put on everything, on every device, basically. So let me know why you hate Apple in the comment section down below. You can come to their defense. I'd love to hear why you like Apple, why you hate Apple. What companies you don't like. Do you not like Google? I think Google can be frustrating sometimes. I think every company can be frustrating, but I think a lot of people tend to hate Apple because they're the class. They're the class of their division. They're number one in basically everything. I know it makes people mad, but in design, in performance, not really performance, but I guess optimization, they're number one. A lot of like big time YouTubers use Mac and Apple products for their software optimization with Final Cut Pro, and I know that. So, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that everybody has Apple devices. And I think that makes people mad, because it's like, well, you can get more power if you buy a Windows-based I can get an Android phone with this and this and this and this, and it's like, that's great. But at the end of the day, you don't get iMessage, you don't get iPhoto, you don't get iMovie, you don't get all those great apps, that Pages, you don't get all those things that only Apple devices can get. So, like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you like the video. And if you don't like the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We could use the help. Although we have a 300% increase since like a week ago in subscribers, which is cool. So, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm Scott with Techno Eclipse, and this table is very wobbly. It fell the other day.